All right, in this video, I really want to talk about minnow fishing in ponds or minnow fishing from the bank. Now, I just kind of talked about this in a video just a few days ago. I was going through kind of the list of my favorite wintertime baits for bank fishermen, and I talked about the minnow in that. And then I led a lot of you guys to go check out my video on Bass Fishing HQ, where I was actually fishing this in a pond. Now, in that video on Bass Fishing HQ, I really talked about specifically how to fish this bait. But I know that some of you guys may have not watched that video. And so in this video, I'm just going to talk to you simply how to fish the minnow, the jig head minnow bait from the bank. It is a very effective tool, especially in really cold water. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. And right now over at Fin Fishing, everything on the website is 20% off, including the USA made sun shirts and the new pants. I'm hoping to have more pants back in stock this coming week. Also, for every dollar that is spent from now until the very end of the year, I am actually doing a big contest where I'm giving away 10 different prizes. And for every dollar spent, you get an entry into this contest. I'm giving away reels, glide baits, a fishing trip with myself, a Humminbird Solix 12 unit, giving away a lot of different cool products. But anyways, I'm going to leave links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk a little bit about fishing the jig head minnow from the pond. Now, let's first talk about the bait itself real quickly. Most of you guys know and understand what a jig head minnow is. This has been the most popular bait of choice for bass fishermen over probably the last almost 3 years now. And it is so simple. It is typically used with forward-facing sonar, which a lot of people hate. But it is like, until you have really done it, I just suggest that you try it. But anyways, this is still a very effective way at catching bass, even in a pond. And I really want to talk about one thing, which is the setup. When it comes to fishing in most ponds out there, I would say that you do not have to go more than about 1/4 ounce. You know, in a big lake, at times I might use a 3/8 ounce, even a 1/2 ounce to get a bait really deep. Most of the time in a pond, I'm going to stick with an 1/8, 3/16. 1/4 ounce is about the biggest that I would go, especially when you're dealing with cold water temperature, which is what we're kind of talking about today, because typically in cold water, I want a little bit slower rate. So sometimes I might go with an 1/8 ounce. And a lot of times if you're fishing from the bank in a pond or something like that, you are fishing only in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 foot of water really at most. And so you do not need a big weight by any means. As far as the minnow goes, there's a ton of different minnows out there on the market. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that just because there's so many different ones and they all work pretty well. I have a lot more about a minnow that I will do in the springtime. But anyways, the biggest thing you can do is just match the hatch. You know, like a lot of ponds have some sort of bluegill in them. So sometimes a little bit darker tint. This is a little bit more of a shad color that I'm holding up right here. But sometimes having a bait that's a green pumpkiny, a goldish, a purplish, maybe a chartreuse can work really well. Some ponds have fathead minnows in them. Some ponds have golden shiners in them. Just try to match the hatch with your bait. Now, when it comes to fishing this bait, I really keep it very simple. I am going to, a lot of times, cast this bait out into the middle of the pond because a lot of times I don't always know where the fish are going to be in a new pond. Cast this thing out into the middle of the pond, and literally you're just going to let that bait hit the bottom. As it's sinking, you can literally just see your line. Someone say, how do you know when it hits the bottom? I think most of you understand this, but it's literally as that thing is sinking, if your line stops, it has hit the bottom. And then what I like to do a lot of times is I just pop the bait quickly off the bottom. I don't like to snap it off the bottom. I don't want to do it in here because I want to jack the rod up. But a lot of times I'm just going to kind of hop that bait off the bottom. And the big thing that I'm trying to do there is kind of clear the little bit of debris that may have got on it. You know, the bottom of ponds is typically pretty muddy or mucky, silty, leafy, gooey, grassy. So sometimes that little pop just clears that bait free of whatever crap may be on the bottom. And then I'm going to start my retrieve. And so the big thing with the retrieve, in the wintertime, a lot of bass are going to relate to the bottom. Whether you're in a big lake or whether you're in a pond, they are going to relate to the bottom, and they're going to be hugging the bottom a lot of times, maybe not right on the bottom, but at times definitely right on the bottom, but sometimes usually within a foot. So I like to keep that bait like a foot, 2 foot off the bottom. And so the biggest thing that you can do with a jig head minnow is start to get a feel for the bait. And this I'm just gonna be honest with you, it takes a minute to understand this. Like, it takes a minute for you to get a feel to understand what that bait is doing out there on the water. And so once you cast that bait out, you pop it up. What you're gonna do to start working the bait is just ever so slightly do this with your rod. You're just gonna jiggle your rod. And as you're jiggling your rod, you're just slowly reeling, very slowly. Like, this is, I would say this is about my average pace of my reel. Depending on your gear ratio, it may be a little bit different. It is very, very slow. Now, when you're first getting started and you haven't done this a whole lot, you don't always understand, is that bait getting a little bit higher? Is it getting a little bit lower in the water column? Is it coming straight? The big thing that you can do about 2 times in a cast is just stop. Just completely stop and let that bait fall down to the bottom. And when it falls down to the bottom, you're going to be able to gauge how far off the bottom that bait got. So if you stop it and it literally just sinks for a split second, like a quarter second, and it hits the bottom, then you may have been going a little bit too slow where that bait is really starting to get closer to the bottom. And sometimes I have fished a bait too slow where I just start hitting the bottom. So if you're hitting the bottom, then obviously you need to speed up your reel handle. Now, if you stop it and it drops a lot, like it drops for several seconds, then you probably know you got that bait way too high in the water column. So you really, like I said, it takes a minute to get a feel for this bait. It may take you 3 or 4, 5, 6 casts to really get a feel for it. But once you kind of figure out the cadence at which you really just need to, the speed at which you need to crank your handle, once you understand that, then you're good to go. And I will say that you start to get a feel too of where that bait is as far as coming back up to the bank. And I talked about this in the Bass Fishing HQ video, but a lot of times if you have a pond that, say for example, like here's the bank is going down into the water, and then a lot of ponds will just kind of flatten out. That little spot right there where the angle of the bank kind of flattens out, that little zone flat where it's angled and then flattens out, I feel like bass hold there a lot. Right in that little zone. It's just out of sight. It gives them an easy opportunity to go up and down, and I feel like that is where you get a lot of bites. And so a lot of times when you are getting that bait and it is coming closer to you, if you don't kind of somewhat speed up your reel handle, you will start to hit the bottom because you're going back up that slope. And again, it's just something you got to get the feel of. You got to fish it. You got to not bring any other bait and just fish it. But once you get the feel of it, that is when you will start to get a lot of bites, is when that bait is going from the flat zone and is starting to curl up and go up the slope, bam, that is when they will hit you. At least my experience, that is when they will hit you. So guys, that's pretty much jig head minnow fishing in a pond. It is not hard to do. You got to get the feel. That's the best way for me to explain it. You have to do it and get the feel for it. And once you get the feel for it, you'll understand it. And really, once you get bit, like as soon as you catch a fish on any bait, like the immediate confidence that just starts flowing through you is like one of my favorite things in bass fishing. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have questions, ask them down below. Don't forget to check out that fin fishing gear, and I will see you guys tomorrow.